Hello, Council President Peterson. Councilors, I am Robin Briggs. I am the Central Services Manager, the Finance Manager over Central Services. I use she, her pronouns. I'm with you today to present Resolution 245407 for the fiscal year 23-24 Supplemental Budget Amendment. I am joined today by my colleague who will present the amendment related to housing, and I will let her introduce herself now.
Good morning, Council President and Councilors. My name is Rachel Lembo. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Finance Manager for Housing and Planning Development and Research.
Cinnamon Williams, Financial Planning Director, generally presents these amendments to you, but she's taking some well-deserved time off. We have financial planning staff here today to answer questions if you should have questions about any of what's presented. Additionally, Brian Kennedy, Metro's Chief Financial Officer, is also available. The supplemental budget amendment before you today will be the final budget amendment of FY 23-24 budget as we get close to wrapping up the budget year on June 30th. Next slide, please. Here is an overview of the presentation today. This budget amendment does not request FTE changes. However, this amendment does have fund level appropriation changes, which can be found in Exhibit A of your packet, and I will go over on the next few slides. Additionally, this amendment has capital improvement plan amendments, which can be found in attachments 1 through 4 of your packet. Next slide, please. I will start with a Parks and Nature Operating Fund, which is requesting an overall increase to appropriations of $550,000. This increase is made up of the following. On the next slide, please. First, Parks and Nature Operating Department is recognizing $200,000 in grant funding they received in April from the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board. The expectation is that the Park Science team will spend down this grant before fiscal year end on the Barton Stream Restoration Project costs. We want to capture the revenue and the associated expense. Secondly, the Parks Department anticipates Glendoveer Golf Course revenues to come in higher than originally budgeted. This great weather has brought out more golf activity than planned. When revenues increase for the golf course, there are corresponding operating cost increases that go along with that. Parks is requesting $350,000 to be added to the budget in order to manage that budget impact. Next slide, please. Now we will move on to the Supportive Housing Services Fund, which was requesting a transfer from contingency of just over $111,318,000. The net impact to the fund appropriation is zero as it moves funding between appropriation categories. You can see the decrease to contingency with a corresponding increase within the expenditures category. The result of this amendment is to increase the budget for county partner SHS spending. I will now turn it over to Rachel Lembo to provide a detailed explanation for this amendment.
Thanks, Robin. Next slide, please. As you recall, county SHS expenditures are reported as Metro expenditures, so we need to include sufficient appropriation for their spending in our budget. The Metro adopted budget included $212.1 million for county SHS expenditures. This was based on the estimated distribution amount of the initial tax forecast of $234 million and did not include any carryover spending. The proposed amendment increases the county SHS expenditure budget to $323.5 million. This is based on updated county budgets, which include carryover spending at all counties, and increases in Multnomah and Washington County budgets based on the new revenue forecast. It also considers actual spending through quarter 3 and estimated spending in quarter 4. This is higher than the current county forecasted spending. As we discussed in the SHS Q3 presentation last week, their actual costs may be higher than what they are currently forecasting. Budget law requires sufficient appropriation for expected expenditures, so our estimate for the purposes of this budget amendment does assume that their full year costs are higher. I'll pass it back to Robin.
You can go to the next slide, please. The last appropriation change I will present is for the General Asset Management Fund. This is a capital fund, and the requested change comes from our Capital Asset Management Department due to the budget increase for the MRC Plaza and Parking Areas project. The net impact to the fund appropriation is zero as it moves funding between appropriation categories by reducing contingency with a corresponding increase to expenditures. As this change has an impact to the CIP, I will go into more detail on the next slide along with the other capital changes being presented today. As mentioned on the previous slide, Capital Asset Management is requesting an increase to the MRC Plaza and Parking Areas project due to the waterproofing measures needed to prevent leaks from the plaza into the underground garage. The total increase is $800,000, which is made up of two components. One, a transfer from the General Asset Management Fund contingency for the $755,000 that you saw on the previous slide. The remaining $45,000 is able to be moved off of another project that came in under budget and onto this project, which doesn't change appropriation overall, it just switches where it will be used. Our next change to the capital improvement plan is being requested from Waste Prevention and Environmental Services Department to address health, safety, and deferred maintenance needs. There are a total of 11 projects within WPES that have budgets being adjusted. Your packet provides detail about all of these 11 projects being shifted, but I will discuss the overall reason for the changes today. WPES is moving funds from certain delayed projects to start 2 new projects, one of which is an emergency equipment repair for a loader, and the other being a push wall repair at Metro Central Transfer Station. Additionally, funds from certain delayed projects will be used for several projects with costs forecasted to exceed budget. The current year net budget impact is 0, and WPES is not requesting any change to contingency as they are able to move funding between projects to manage the needed changes. Next slide, please. At our venues, we also have some capital improvement plan changes. Portland 5 has 2 projects that were budgeted in the previous fiscal year but had delayed starts. We are requesting changes to the timing of these projects and to put budget in the appropriate fiscal year. These are the Keller Lightboard project and the front of house elevators at Antoinette Hatfield Hall. These increases are being offset by a project that has come in under budget and is being reduced, and another project that is being deferred to a future year. As P5 is able to move funding between projects and budget years, no change to contingency is requested, and the net current year budget impact is 0. Next slide, please. The final change to CIP that I'm presenting today is a technical change that corrects an error in the March amendment. In March, we came to you to change timing of certain project budgets for the Oregon Convention Center. At that time, we requested a reduction in the waterproofing, rain garden, parking areas, and southwest exterior project, and to use that to offset increases to other project budgets due to timing. This was in fact the incorrect project to reduce. We intended to reduce instead the waterproofing P1 parking level traffic coding project. This amendment today adds back $990,000 in funding to the waterproofing rain garden project where it needs to be, and reduces funding for the waterproofing P1 parking level, which is on hold for now and not needed in the current fiscal year. There's also a small $15,000 change to the Portland Ballroom Service Corridor project. This is a net budget impact of 0 in the current year as OCC shifts budgets between projects. Next slide. That concludes the budget amendment and CIP changes. Due to the size of the budget change for supportive housing services, this is a supplemental budget. Budget law requires Metro to hold a public hearing. Councilors have an opportunity to discuss the amendments and ask questions here. We will then have a public hearing so that anyone can provide testimony on the supplemental budget amendments. After that, Council will vote on Resolution 245407. And with that, I will ask if there are any questions from councilors today.
Councilors, I guess I'd just kick it off quickly. If you could go back,
Sure.
The $800,000 for the plaza, what percentage of the cost increase is that?
I would have to check on the total project budget. I think that increases it to 3.6 million. It's quite a large increase. I believe you've also seen increases to this project before. I would have to get back to you at the exact percentage increase.
I'm just gonna look at our deputy, COO, Andrew Scott, who oversees capital management. Could you go into that project a little bit and why it's ballooning?
Well, yeah, and Robin, I don't know if you have.
I do know a little
more.
about
I know
the
we've run
project.
into a lot of challenges and delays, but yeah, go
There's
ahead.
been some challenges. Most of it is related to, right now, the planter boxes that are out there. They have, as they started to take up the plaza, they realized there was not waterproofing that went all the way across the plaza. So there had been, I believe, some into the perimeter, but not all the way across the plaza. So they had to dismantle the plaza and then place a membrane down. Once they did that, there was still leaking in the underground garage, and they determined that it was related to the planter boxes. And so now you may have seen that they're removing all of the plants and the materials from the planter boxes, and they're gonna waterproof that and then refill those planter boxes and replant. I think the majority of the cost right now is just associated with those planter box.
If I could just add at a higher level, not the details, thank you, Robin, for that.
Yeah.
I think what we're experiencing here is the challenge. This is an old building, and it's an old building that I think we've done a really good job maintaining on the surface, but a lot of the infrastructure has been challenging. This project is one that, since I got here 5 years ago, we're like, ooh, this is leaking, we've got to do something about it. When you get into these buildings, you realize there's often a lot more complicating factors. This is one of the reasons, just on the upside, if you think back to the auditor's audit presentation a week or two ago, around renewal and replacement funds. It's one of the reasons why we're doing these facility condition assessments. We actually have an RFP now for a facility condition assessment firm that's going to be able to do that for all of Metro. So for this building, we're working on that, other buildings, so that we can get a better sense of these things. So when we start these projects, hopefully we know the risks a little bit more ahead of time.
Appreciate that. Thanks.
I don't think this will be the last time you see this project before you. I do believe this is the last project budget increase. We weren't sure the timing of when the funds would be needed, just due to weather and considerations of when the contractor can do the work. We put all $800,000 to be available to be used in this fiscal year as they're working on it. I do think that we'll probably need some of this funding to be moved into the summer months, but we really won't know that until the work really starts wrapping up. So we may come to you in November, but at that time, it would just be a movement of funds, not additional funds, to make sure we have enough appropriation in next year's budget to finish out the project.
Thank you. Counselor Lewis and Rosenthal and Nolan.
Sure, thank you. I'd like to go back to the push wall at Central. It was not in our packet. Could you speak to the project a little bit more and in particular clarify on the record, since it matters to many, what fund we are paying for that out of?
Yes, I think I'll have to ask Patrick Dennis to come up. He is the finance manager over Waste Prevention Environmental Services.
Hi, counselors. Patrick Dennis, he, him. I am the WPES finance manager for the record. The push wall repair, since it pertains primarily to the transfer station operations, will be paid from the mixed solid waste fees to repair that wall. This was an unexpected project that just came to light in the last month or two. And the estimated cost is going to be over $50,000 or over $100,000, hence why it needs to be put on the CIP starting this fiscal year.
Thank you.
Okay, Counselor Rosenthal, Nolan, and Huang.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question on the estimate for Q4 for the money, the extra money from the SHS allocation. How sure are we of that? Do we have really good numbers to estimate what the Q4 is going to be? I mean, I hear a lot of different things from the counties.
It is not a high certainty estimate. What I will say is that we were conservative to the extent that we estimated high.
Okay.
Because the last thing that I want is have a budget law violation because the counties were more effective in implementing these programs and actually spent more than anybody thought they would. So this brings the estimated county spending to about $325 million. I believe that their forecasts are about $260 million. We're probably going to land somewhere in the middle, maybe $300 million. But because we won't actually have their actual numbers until well after the fiscal year, we intentionally estimated high for the purposes of this budget amendment.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. Counselor Nolan.
Thanks, Madam President. On the P5 projects, the ones that are owned by the city, certainly the Hattie, do we expect full reimbursement from the city of Portland, and when?
I do not have the answer to that. I can defer to perhaps Ashley Sloan, do you know?
Hello, counselors. Ashley, Finance Manager for the Mark Venues. It's my understanding that the CIP funds come from, all of the funds that we are managing are the city's funds, right? So they don't need to reimburse us because we're using their funding to do these projects to begin with.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
For the record, I would just note Counselor Nolan's question is a really good question. And I don't think that the city's been adequately giving us the opportunity to do large capital upgrades that would then belay some of these smaller or larger unanticipated capital projects. So while there will be no transfer of funds now, I think the entire council is probably ready for an IGA update that we're negotiating how to have that conversation with the city, so.
Great, thank you, Madam President.
Yeah, no, thank you, Councilor Nolan, for the question, and President Peterson. I think that's exactly the right point. These are city funds, and we also need them for operating. We need them for other capital projects, and so the more of these that come up, we know, and you heard this in the budget presentation. P5 is looking at having a challenging, fiscal year, and so these conversations need to continue, and frankly, probably need to be amped up a little bit more in terms of we won't carry the water on these buildings as they continue to deteriorate, and the city needs to do that, and so. I agree, those conversations need to continue.
Thank you for putting the finer point on it. All right. Counselor Wong.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. I just want to pick up the line of questioning again on the SHS spending. I guess I just have some questions around kind of, the estimate and then the revising of the forecast. Where I know it's a notoriously volatile funding stream, but the forecast was a difference of over $130 million. And this council and our partners are making a lot of plans around these dollars for many years into the future. And I'm wondering if there's any way to increase accuracy and predictability on that, and is it just who's making the forecast, and what can we do to make it more accurate, because this is like a 30-some% variance, and just wanting to increase accuracy for better policy making into the future.
Thank you for the question. And can I clarify, are you speaking to the expense forecasts or the revenue forecasts, or both?
I'm talking about the revenue forecast.
Okay.
And also, when do we change the forecast? Because I see in this, it started at 212, and then sometime in the year it was increased to 356. So what is the timing and process for changing the forecast?
Yes. So we do. Just to be clear, if it actually doesn't say it on the slide, so don't pull the slide back up. But the initial tax forecast was $234 million. The 212 was the initial expense forecast for the county spending. So initial revenue forecast was $234 million, and then that was increased to 356. We did that in November.
We is you or?
Josh Harwood, our tax and fiscal policy director.
And we should note, Brian Kennedy, he, him pronouns, CFO. The forecast under the IGA with the counties is agreed to by the financial review team that includes the CFO of Metro, Multnomah County, Washington County, and Clackamas County. So it's we do most of the analytic work, but the process requires all four parties to agree to the forecast.
So at the time that we increased it was last fall. We had essentially at that point finally realized how much we had collected from the prior fiscal year. We'd received all of the collections. We'd received a lot of the data from the tax reports themselves from our tax administrator and had the time to analyze it. So that was the point we were able to make an updated forecast. The initial projection was made a year before that when we started our budget process, and we didn't even know how much we were going to collect in year two. So a lot of this is just is startup, that this is still a new income tax for us, and the amount of time it takes for us to actually collect the revenue, and then even more time to collect the data behind the revenue. A lot of people make their estimated payments and then file their return slightly later. So we're still playing a little bit of catch up. But I think this forecast was certainly, we felt that we were able to be a lot more accurate than in prior years, and we are still refining. I think we will be closer, our actuals will be closer to the forecast this year. At this point, we're expecting them to be slightly less than that forecasted amount. It's never going to be something that we can predict perfectly. It's not like property taxes where we have the data. It's very easy to forecast and model that out. Income taxes are not like that. But I think, yeah, we are constantly getting better at doing this. And I think going forward, we won't see this level of change in forecast.
Yeah, but 33%-ish variance seems like a lot, but I don't know if there's like a narrower band you can get it down to.
Well, I think Councilor Wong, there are two issues here that we need to be aware of. So one, this action is related to Metro's accounting policy and how we track the SHS funds. So we don't actually, from a budgetary perspective, we don't record that transaction when we send the money to the counties, we record it when they spend it. So we have to make an estimate early in the year about how much they're gonna spend. And again, because we don't control when they spend it, we don't want to end up in the situation where the counties spend more than we estimated and we have a budget violation at the end of the year. So Rachel and her team are doing a good job of being conservative and trying to protect Metro from that uncertainty. And so we had a fairly conservative forecast early on. We need to adjust that. Then on the other side is that the county expenditures are always going to be driven at some extent by the revenues. And while we will continue to get more accurate and get a better sense of what those patterns are, income taxes are among the most volatile forms of tax, and the high earners are the most volatile taxpayers in that most volatile tax. So it's gonna, it will not be uncommon to have large swings in either direction in any given year. And the existence of those swings is not to sound defensive, and it probably does sound defensive, but it's a characteristic of the type of revenue stream we're taxing rather than our forecasting. The state has the exact same problem when it comes to the kicker, that and Oregon is a relatively small state, so the individual actions can have material impacts, like say someone winning the Powerball. You can't forecast somebody winning $1 billion Powerball jackpot, though that could have a material impact on our tax collections.
Yes. And
so it's going to be difficult to get the level of precision that will completely eliminate the need for these sorts of adjustments in the future.
Brian, that was actually the example. I mean, that actually happened, right?
Yes.
And do we have an estimate of what that, a lottery win is going to bring in for SHS? Or I don't want to put you on the spot if we don't. But the point is, it's not like $100,000. It's millions of dollars because someone
18
won the
million, I
lottery.
think, was the estimate I saw.
Yeah.
So it's great for all of us and completely and completely unpredictable. And so I just,
It's a whole building right there.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, great, thank you.
And
Any other
actually, Councilor
questions?
Wong, if you're open to it, I would love for Brian and Josh Harwood to just give you a briefing on the way we forecast property tax or income taxes, because we've had a lot of internal discussion about this. I actually think we're doing a really good job, and it's always going to be very, very volatile. Not as volatile as it was, as Rachel has pointed out, but it's going to remain volatile moving forward. And we're trying to socialize that, not just with our council, with the counties as well. So.
Understood. Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Thank you. Councilor Gonzalez.
Thanks, President Peterson. Yeah, if I could ask a question on the plaza, so kind of walking back to the first question. There's a high level education question that I want to ask about when this project was originally built. And so when we kind of go into fixing an issue and we find out the scope of the problem continues to be bigger and bigger, what steps do we as Metro or governments, or this is a very general question, take to determine what was the responsibility or the scope of the contract at the time, with either materials or the responsibility of the builder to do things in a certain way? I don't even know who the builder of this project is, so I'm not trying to admonish
Sears.
that builder.
It was Sears.
But it's I don't want to use the word negligence because it sounds defensive or I think assigning responsibility. But what steps do we take as an organization to determine, what the responsibility of that is? I get that's a complicated question in terms of assigning that responsibility, but I mean, we obviously we dug up, we found the problem continues to be bigger than we thought it was. That's just what happens sometimes with these projects, but walk me through that.
I'm going to ask actually so we do those. I think each one of them varies project by project, and I'm actually wondering if it would be useful for capital asset management to send a memo to council sort of explaining this project, how it started, the cost increases that we've had and the challenges we've run into along the way. Because I know that we've got some people who are really in the weeds on this, and I if it's okay, we can get that to council relatively quickly.
And again, it's a education aspect, and we gotta improve the plaza. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
We gotta get it up to par.
It is an important question, and I think one of those things that is we are building out our capital asset management program, doing more and more of. How are we managing these projects and how are we managing these contracts? We're always going to run into these types of things, but I think to your point, we want to make sure that we're not also making errors along the way. So it's an excellent question.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, well, all I know is that water on concrete eventually ends up with a massive problem with the structure. So getting it dealt with, but understanding the scope is an important aspect of that. So thank you. All right, seeing no other questions, we will move on to our public hearing. Thank you both, all of you, for coming up and answering our questions and the hard work behind it. We will move into our public hearing for resolution number 24-5407 for the purpose of amending the fiscal year 2023 through 24 budget and appropriation schedule and fiscal year 2023 through 24 through fiscal year 2027 through 28 capital improvement plan to provide changes in operations. Connor, will you please describe the audience our procedures for the public hearing?
Yes, thank you. So if anyone wishes to testify on resolution number 24-5407, and now is the time to do so. Public testimony will be limited to 3 minutes, and I'll manage a timer to go off at the 3-minute mark. If you've not already signed up to speak, you can do so now. If you're joining us on Zoom, you can sign up by hitting the raise hand button, which depending on your version of Zoom is either at the bottom of your screen or within the reactions tab. For those joining us in person, you can sign up by filling out one of the blue cards in the back of the room and bringing that up to me. As a reminder to everybody testifying today, you do not need to give your physical address. However, please do identify yourself for the record before testifying. So with that, President Peterson, councilors, we have not had anybody sign up in advance to speak today. I'll just give folks in our Zoom and physical audience another moment or two to raise their hand if they would like. All right, and seeing none.
Great. With that, we will close the public hearing on resolution number 24-5407, and I will call for a motion on resolution number 24-5407.
I would move to adopt resolution 24-5407.
Second, Gonzalez.
I'm sorry, did you say that right? Can you repeat it? I'm not sure that you got the resolution.
Resolution 24-5407.
Thank you. And it's been seconded. Connor, will you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Councilor Lewis.
Aye.
Councilor Wong.
Aye.
Councilor Gonzalez.
Aye.
Councilor Rosenthal.
Aye.
Councilor Nolan.
Yes.
And President Peterson.
Aye, the motion passes. Thank you. All right. Ordinances, we have a second reading and vote today on ordinance number 24-1512. We have Glenn Hamburg coming forward to help us with this. It's for the purpose of annexing to the Metro District approximately 27.85 acres in Hillsborough, north of Northeast Evergreen Road between Northwest 273rd and Northeast Sewell Avenue. The first reading of this ordinance was June 13th, 2024. Councilors, do we have any further questions for Glenn on this ordinance? Seeing no hands raised in virtual world or here in the council chambers. Thank you, Glenn, much appreciated.
Yeah.
I will call for a motion on ordinances number 24-1512.
Move approval.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councilor Gonzalez and seconded by Councilor Rosenthal. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Connor, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Counselor Gonzalez,
Aye.
Counselor Nolan,
Yes.
Counselor Wong,
Aye.
Counselor Rosenthal,
Yes.
Counselor Lewis,
Aye.
and President Peterson.
Aye, the motion passes, thank you. All right, we'll move on to ordinance number 24-1513 for the purpose of annexing to the Metro District approximately 20.66 acres in Sherwood, north and west of Southwest Brookman Road. Counselors, this is the second reading of this ordinance, and it was, and the first was on June 13th as well. Are there any further questions for Glenn on this ordinance? Not seeing any hands raised virtually or in person. Do I have a motion for ordinance number 24-1513?
I move to adopt ordinance 24-1513.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
We're really pushing it today. It's been moved by Counselor Rosenthal and seconded by Counselor Lewis. Any further discussion, counselors? All right, thank you. Connor, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Counselor Wong,
Aye.
Counselor Lewis,
Aye.
Counselor Nolan,
Yes.
Counselor Rosenthal,
Yes.
Counselor Gonzalez,
Aye.
and President Peterson.
Aye, the motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Glenn. Thanks for coming in. All right, we'll move on to Chief Operating Officer Communications. We have Deputy COO Andrew Scott.
Great, thank you, President Peterson. Just one very quick thing, and I hope I'm not stepping on any counselor communications. I just wanted to note we had an executive advisory committee meeting on Tuesday for Expo Futures and heard a number of interesting things, one of which staff had an opportunity to travel to Alabama and Tennessee to see some facilities that might be examples of what we're trying to create with Expo Future. And we're excited to come back next Tuesday at our joint meeting with Merck, and it's going to be held out at Expo. And I think it's going to be an exciting meeting to present what we found so far and talk to you all about next steps in the direction. And that's my only update.
Thank you. All right, counselors, counselor communication, anything? Counselor Lewis.
Sure, thank you. Wanted to report back that this past weekend was the Clackamas County Coordinating Committee Annual Retreats. My participation was supported this year by Ramona in my office. So it was great to have two Metroids in the room alongside elected officials from across Clackamas. We spent from lunch to dinner on Friday on transportation priorities and vision, and we spent from breakfast to lunch on Saturday on housing priorities and vision. It was a great retreat held in Welch's with, Clackamas County Commissioners as well as city folks, my friend and colleague at TriMet, and myself from Metro. I also wanted to report back that the Oregon City Community Enhancement Grants were approved Monday evening. And our Community Enhancement Grant Committee had a competitive process, but funding was awarded to Kanema Historic Cemetery, Clackamas Workforce Partnership, Greater Oregon City Watershed Council, Hannah Grace Family, Oregon City Together, Oregon City Arts Commission, Oregon City Farmers Market, Oregon City Parks and Rec, Park Place Neighborhood Association, OC Porch Fest, Willamette Symphony, and Clackamas Women's Services. So really great to be able to support those organizations and their mission to make Oregon City quite livable and make the transfer station there an asset and not an asset. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Counselor Gonzalez.
Yeah, for sure. Oh. Wow. Sorry about that. I had muted on my computer like a novice here. It's been a long morning for some of us. Counselor Lewis and I were at JPAC this morning, which went really well in my humble opinion. Yeah. We importantly approved with unanimous approval from all the members of JPAC the RUFA direction, which includes a whole bunch of different regional flexible funding allocation direction, which includes a whole bunch of different items for the way that we implement that at Metro, which is broken up into a step 1 and a step 2. Step 2 is a competitive grant program and step one pays for bond repayments, but also some of the important investment programs in the region, like Safe Routes to School and other important investments like that. Importantly, within what we approved to bring to council is a general agreement on some items that we still need to develop more, but a bond for basically investments in the region. So feel really, really good about that. We also had a presentation from ODOT and TriMet on HB 2017 transit investments, how that's played out since the legislation passed, and that's part of our education series for the JPAC work on a 2025 session. And those are some of the biggest takeaways that I'm taking with me. But Councilor Lewis, if there's anything else you'd like to share?
No, I agree with you. It was a good meeting, and I think that the opportunity was there for us to fray. And we actually had unanimous support of our approach to developing a bond program. Granted, there's a whole lot ahead of us, like at least 6 more blue boxes. And there will be obviously more consternation when real numbers are on the table and real projects are on the table, but philosophically, we were all able to get there with our understanding of the approach. So thank you to partners who have had multiple outside meetings, some of them over lunch, some of them not, to get us to this point.
Yeah, it's a big moment, and I appreciate your leadership, all of you, all 3 of you on that. It's great. And the entire region.
Yeah, big moment.
Great. Any other communications, counselors? Seeing no hands raised? All right. With no further discussion, the council meeting is adjourned. Our next regularly scheduled meeting is for Tuesday, June 25th, 2024 at 10:30 a.m. Thank you.